Do you want a guaranteed positive results? Do you want to become unstoppable in your studies? Eat That Frog for Students is a book which guarantees that after learning and applying 22 principles given in the book, you will become unstoppable. The author of the book is Tracy and Anna Lenberger. The wonderful theme of the book is Stop Procrastinating and Excel in Your Studies. It is a motivating and self help book. Now, the book is becoming interesting with the introduction of villain and hero. In this book, the villain is a frog which is big, hard, and maybe ugly, and you are the hero who will defeat this frog. To defeat this frog, author Tracy has shared 22 principles. If you follow these principles, you will become powerful enough to eat that frog. The first principle is your self-esteem. Self-esteem is a belief in yourself. It is a confidence which you have in your own abilities, just like a Superman have in him. Author says anything you think about constantly becomes your reality. But guys, be logical in your thinking. Second principle is even more interesting. It encourages you to take personal responsibility for your deeds. Author says taking responsibility means refusing to get angry or resentful about things you cannot control. You can focus on how you are reacting to the problem because that is the only thing you can control. Then comes the third principle, which is goal setting. We all know that we measure success when we reach some goal. So, if you don't have any goal, how will you measure your success? Author advises writing down your goals on a piece of paper so that it becomes concrete. Also, goals should be written in present form such that it shows that you have already have your goal done. For example, instead of writing I want to get 90% in an exam, write I get 90% in exam. Again, remember to write your goal in a positive and personal form. Just like before having your meal, you decorate your plates with all the items you want to eat, or your dinner table with whatever things you want to eat. Similarly, fourth principle says you should write all your goals and objectives before you start any task. Defining your plates or tasks help you in bringing clarity to whatever you are going to execute. Fifth principle says to plan your each day in advance. For planning your each day, author mentioned a 6P formula, which is proper prior planning prevents poor performance. Following this 6P formula, if you plan your day night before the next day, it will signal your subconscious mind to work on the plan and you became ready from within. Also, the author have mentioned 10 by 90 formula in which he claims that if you put 10% of effort in planning the task first, you can save 90% of your execution time, which is not possible if you have started working on tasks before planning. You have already seen most of the successful scholars, when interviewed, talk about having the timetable for studies. You should make your own timetable for study in which you even have a plan for a short chunk of time. For example, if you have 45 minutes for traveling, you should have some flashcards ready for that time also. author does not tell you to study the entire day, but to study in a way in which you and your memory responds well to it. There is an amazing principle in psychology known as Pareto principle, which says 80% of outcomes result from 20% of all inputs. Author says to apply this 80 by 20 rule on your studies. To apply this 80 by 20 rule, author has given certain activity. This activity is: make a list of all the key goals, activities, projects, and responsibilities in your life today. Find out which tasks or activities are so important that can represent 80 or 90% of your result. For example, if you are good at math and your marks in math can affect your total percentage, then put more effort on that subject to become perfect. Similarly, find more such activities and tasks on which putting efforts can give more fruitful results. In the principle, which author calls as slice and dice, the task he wants to guide you to defeat your big frog. Suppose you have a big task and you have to do it, and you are not finding any way for starting that task. Author says just slice the task into bite-sized pieces and then take a piece and complete it one by one. Author says, according to this principle, identify the most important tasks and priorities that have more serious consequences, both positive and negative, on your life and schoolwork. Focus on these tasks first, then do anything else. We mostly try to finish unimportant and easy tasks first rather than opting for an important task because that is a boring one. But here the author says choose wisely. Suppose you have opted for a big and hard task, but you don't know what to do now. Here you can always take at least one action that can move the task forward. For example, you have to finish a project for your school, but you don't know how to start. You can take a simple action by identifying what should go on the index page of it, and gradually you can write introduction and other contents you identify in the index. Author Tracy says, motivate yourself into action. Get the intrinsic motivation for your work. Be optimistic by looking for the good in every situation. Be constructive by finding solutions and not crying over problems. Be solution oriented and not problem oriented. To increase productivity and gain high performance in whatever you do, become unstoppable for that task. If you have selected the important task to finish it up, work on it without stopping unless it is 100% complete. The author does not mean to say to do the work continuously, but he is focusing on being consistent with the task or subtask you have selected. Do you want to trigger the high performance attitude in yourself? Yes, it can be done if you develop a sense of urgency for your work. When you are clear with your objectives and goals, what are you waiting for? This principle says to put pressure on yourself. But the question is, how can you put pressure on yourself? How can you motivate yourself? Yes, you got it correct, by putting imaginary deadlines. Put a deadline to every task and subtask which you have to do. Gamify your task by putting deadlines, and you will feel the pleasure of doing it. While explaining the principle, learn how to learn, author says, learn the key skills that can help you the most in getting better and faster results. Secondly, make a habit to test yourself on what you remember before doing your homework. Next principle says to identify your key constraints. There are two types of constraints which can hold you back. They are internal and external constraints. As I have already said, that 80-20 rule could be applied to anything. You will be glad to know that 80% of all your constraints are internal. They are within yourself. The good news is that you can do anything which is internal to you. You can control your internal constraints by practice. 20% of your constraints are external, which means that they are outside in the form of time commitments, family responsibilities, and resources. You have to identify them and seek help to deal with them with your elders and teachers. To excel in your studies, you should know how to focus on key result areas. Author Brian Tracy has given a metacognition technique which will help you to focus on key result areas. For this, you need to first identify everything you think you know. The second step is to identify everything you don't know. In the third step, you have to go through the things you don't know and look them all up and make a new study guide for yourself that include those terms or concepts. In the final step, recheck your list of what you know, and if something is missing or wrongly added, add that too to the other list. Suppose you have to cook something. Now, to prepare a meal, you need to collect all the ingredients so that you put them at the right time while preparing the meal. Similarly, when you have to start any task, you should collect all the things required for that task and then start executing it. If you get prepared before starting anything, you can reduce the stress and anxiety which could occur if you are not prepared. This principle says to develop focus. Author Brian Tracy has given 3D for developing a new habit. First is decision. You have to decide that you will develop whatever new habit you want to develop. Second is discipline. You have to discipline yourself to practice the new habit consistently. And the third is determination. Be determined and continue doing actions unless it becomes a permanent part of your personality. To develop focus for your attention, you need to develop the habit of asking yourself, is this helping me achieve one of my most important goals? Or is this just a distraction? If not properly used, the technology becomes a terrible master. It starts controlling you. Author Brian Tracy have given two amazing activities in his book Eat That Frog to control your technology usage. First activity is you have to turn off your computer and mobile for 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon. Then comment and let me know how you feel. Other than this, in activity 2, you have to do this digital detox for entire full day. Gradually, you will start seeing and feeling the difference. Technology is a wonderful servant if used properly. Author Brian Tracy have given 3 powerful activities to use the technology efficiently. Activity 1 is turning off all notifications except which you need in an emergency. He suggested downloading apps or finding a website in which you can make your to-do list and mark the task priorities. In activity 2, author Brian Tracy has asked to focus on that app or website which you have found for at least 2 months before switching to something new. Hopping around will affect your attention and distract you, so avoid hopping around. In activity 3, author Brian Tracy suggested finding more resources for your topics online so that your concept clarity strengthens. This is an amazing principle. This principle is asking you to procrastinate. This principle is telling you to delay unimportant things. You should delay your low value activities. Keep your focus on that ugly, big, and hard frog rather than tadpoles which don't contribute to your life.